Well, pressure is mounting on Reserve Bank Governor Philip Lowe after he announced a 9th interest rate rise since May. There are growing calls for Dr Lowe to resign and for the Treasurer to use his powers to reverse the RBA's decision to hike interest rates by 25 basis points.
Hello, I'm Paul Barry. Welcome to Media Watch. And as interest rates keep rising, the media keep mugging the man pulling the levers, with the Daily Mail papping the Reserve Bank's $1 million a year man outside his Sydney home with its, quote, park-style garden and wrought iron fence, which the Mail said was conservatively worth at least $4 million. And what did Philip Lowe hold in his rich little paws?
A copy of the Australian Financial Review before driving off in his late-model Volvo XC40.
Meow. And later in the day, after the rate rise was announced, the Mail was back for another nasty scratch.
The humble beginnings of Australia's most loathed banker.
It's hard to believe these yarns drive a lot of traffic for the Mail. I mean, Philip Lowe is no Kim Kardashian. But tabloids need someone to hate. And the Daily Mail tells us that Australia's most loathed banker
nearly died twice in 1 year as governor.
Let's hope this media hounding and a grilling at Senate estimates this week does not make his health even worse. Because the calls for him to go are growing, with Neil Breen on Brisbane's 4BC giving Lowe his marching orders like this.
There they go, Van Halen and Jump, and that was for Philip Lowe. And if I was Philip Lowe, the federal government's going to get you, brother. You won't be surviving in that job. As soon as the time's right, if I were you, I'd be like David Lee Roth and I'd be standing with your back against the record machine because they're coming for you.
And the media are always happy to help politicians join a pile-on.
It's time for Dr Lowe to go.
Well, I think the RBA should just put the finger out the window and just smell the breeze.
As we showed you in December, blaming Philip Lowe for economic hard times is now a popular game. But last week, he wasn't the only one in the firing line.
And what about our banks this morning? Our kind-hearted, community-focused banks. You know, you've all seen the ads. We care about you. We see you. Come bank with us. Your life is a whole lot better with us. We get you. But how much do they really care?
And next day, the Today host was putting that question to Anna Bligh and accusing the banks she represents of inflicting unreasonable pain on borrowers.
The Telegraph this morning called you all a bunch of bankers. That's about right, isn't it? So the banks are just doing it for the country now. You've lifted rates twice as fast as you cut them. Quick to hike, slow to slice. Well, you're on a hiding to nothing, Anna, but at least you're out the front.
I'm sure bank bashing is good for ratings, but what the bashers overlook is that interest rates in many countries are even worse. They're higher than Australia in South Korea, China, the UK and the USA, for starters. And if you don't beat inflation and let it rip like Argentina, you end up with interest rates of 75%. Imagine the media hysteria if that came to pass. Nevertheless, high rates are painful and there are more rises to come. So expect more pain and more coverage like this.
How many more increases can we expect?
As the nation's mortgagees also feel the squeeze.
Are you still sorry for misleading borrowers?
Unfortunately, inflicting pain on the economy is how raising interest rates works to drive inflation down. Nine's economics editor Ross Gittins says it's primitive, blunt and unfair. But while the media bay for Philip Lowe's blood, he warns
it's delusional to imagine that fixing the problem with monetary policy is simply a matter of finding a better person to run it.
We have to say, he's right. But now, to the defamation case we've all been waiting for.
Some breaking news now. Bruce Lerman has launched legal action against the media. He's filed defamation proceedings over coverage of rape allegations made by his former colleague Brittany Higgins. The lawsuit names Network 10 and News Corp. Lerman pleaded not guilty to sexually assaulting Higgins and the charges against him were ultimately dropped.
Yes, the man accused of raping Brittany Higgins in Parliament House in March 2019 is now going after the media who broke the story. And bringing us this hot news, before Lerman's statement of claim was publicly released, was The Australian and its columnist Janet Albrechtsen, who obviously got the drop from Lerman or his legal team.
Recklessly indifferent to truth. Bruce Lerman sues Lisa Wilkinson for damages.
That story was published online late on Tuesday night. And next morning, The Australian's editors made sure that reckless Lisa was front and centre on page 1, as the paper quoted extensively from the unpublished statement of claim. And why did Albrechtsen get the scoop? No doubt because she's written exclusives like this, with claims backed by leaked police documents that charges should never have been laid, that a witness in the trial felt humiliated by the prosecutor, that the case should never have gone ahead, and this weekend another front page questioning whether the DPP was texting his builder during the trial. Those are just 4 of around a dozen articles Ulbrichtsen has co-authored in the last 2 months, all of which have blown in Lerman's or his lawyer's direction. And what's to note about her latest story? Well, the headline completely fails to mention that the Australian stablemate news.com.au and its star reporter Samantha Maiden are also being sued by Lerman. And while the article does mention that in passing, the rest is all Lisa, 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 with quotes like this.
The statements of claim said it could be inferred that Wilkinson was seeking to exploit the false allegations of sexual assault as made by Ms Higgins for her own personal and professional gain.
And
Mr Lerman further claims Wilkinson and Network 10 were recklessly indifferent to the truth or falsity when they alleged he raped Ms Higgins.
Now this is bizarre, because Lerman levels the same charges, almost word for word, against Samantha Maiden. Yet Ulbrichtsen keeps her right out of the spotlight. And while we're told that,
the Australian approached Network 10 and Wilkinson for comment.
There is no mention of seeking comment from Maiden or news.com.au. And in our view, it is not an oversight. Because Ulbrichtsen, who did not return our phone call, was just as one-eyed in December, when she and Stephen Rice broke news that Lerman was gearing up for action.
Leading media lawyer joins Lerman defamation team.
That story had 7 mentions of Lisa Wilkinson, 4 mentions of Network 10 and 1 of the project, but precisely none, yes, none, of Samantha Maiden and news.com.au, who were actually hours ahead of Wilkinson in making Brittany Higgins' allegations public. Fancy that. And it wasn't only the Australian wearing an eye patch. News Corp's Sky News was just as cyclopean, with straplines saying, Lisa Wilkinson sued for defamation, and headlines on its website also shouting about you-know-who. And if you clicked on the video, you got 3 minutes of Andrew Bolt criticising Lisa, with only a 3-second mention of Sam Maiden. And questions like this.
What is Bruce Lerman claiming Wilkinson did wrong?
To which the Australian's media writer Sophie Ellsworth replied,
that in the statement of claim, Lisa Wilkinson was, it's inferring that Lisa Wilkinson was seeking to exploit the false allegations of sexual assault as made by Miss Higgins for her own personal and professional gain.
Missing from their chat was any mention that the statement of claim against News Corp's Samantha Maiden makes exactly the same charges of seeking to exploit the false allegations for personal and professional gain, and of being recklessly indifferent to the truth or falsity of the claims. So why does News Corp make it all about Lisa? Because she drives clicks, she's married to Peter Fitzsimons, whom they also love to bait, and of course she is not employed by News Corp. So, what is the chance that any of Lerman's actions, including one now threatened against the ABC, will get to court and Lerman win? We still think it is unlikely. Higgins said in December she was prepared to take the stand.
If required, I am willing to defend the truth as a witness in any potential civil cases brought about by Mr Lerman.
And last week she repeated her pledge, adding,
a timely reminder.
So, would Bruce Lerman really be up for a full-scale trial? Defamation lawyer Justin Quill told us in December,
Lerman suing would be a case of a man going back into the lion's den to retrieve his hat.
Explaining,
he would have to give evidence and subject himself and his story to cross-examination, which he was able to avoid in the criminal matter.
Lerman will also have to prove he was identified by Wilkinson and Maiden's stories, even though they didn't name him, and that might not be easy. But given how judges treat the media, you'd think they too would be keen to avoid court. So this looks like being a high-stakes game of poker to see who folds first. But now, to those crazy cryptocurrency markets and the millions of unlucky punters who are counting the cost.
Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies have taken a nosedive.
About $8 billion vanished. Now they're crashing.
You may have heard about FTX, but it isn't the only crypto company that's in hot water for leaving hundreds of thousands, maybe even millions of customers in a really bad financial spot.
That was 3 weeks ago, since when prices have recovered a bit. But millions of people have been watching their money disappear day by day. And some, it seems, like Rip Van Winkle, have woken up to the collapse, as this non-fungible token trader at Little Shapes NFT did late last year.
This might sound crazy, but I got into a car accident 5 months ago and just got out of a huge coma. I don't know what's been going on since then, but we're coming back harder than ever.
And having sent that tweet, he looked at his balance.
What the fuck happened to my FTX account?
And reality set in.
Oh my fucking God!
Oh my effing God, indeed. Not surprisingly, it was an irresistible story for crypto media.
Guy wakes up from 5 months in a coma to learn he'd lost more than 100K in crypto collapse.
That's a report in The Chainsaw, an Australian so-called Web3 publication focusing on cryptocurrency and NFT trading. It comes from youth publisher Pedestrian, owned by the Nine media empire, which launched in August with a promise to sort fact from fiction on blockchain technology. And while their timing could hardly have been worse, just 2 months before the spectacular collapse of FTX, they have had plenty of hard luck tales to tell. As reporter Tom Mitchell-Hill wrote in January,
the story of the owner behind the Little Shapes reads more like the script of a Hollywood thriller than a real-life story shared on Twitter. So I reached out to the account's owner for some much-needed context into his insane experience.
It certainly was a film-ready tale. T-boned by a Ford pickup on a grocery run in July, rushed to hospital with a brain bleed, comatose until the end of December.
I obviously wasn't conscious throughout the coma, but I do remember having some wild coma dreams.
And then the miracle recovery and wild discovery of his massive losses. Social media ate it up. And The Chainsaw wasn't the only crypto site to retell it. But The Chainsaw was the only site to actually talk to the man. So imagine their shock when BuzzFeed reported this a week and a half ago.
An NFT guy who said a car crash put him in a 5-month coma was making the whole thing up.
Yes, Atto, as he now wanted to be known, had spun a web of lies. The coma, the hospital bed photo, the tweeted medical bills, the huge crypto losses, a wife being kept in the dark, all fake.
Yeah, bro, I'm 23,
he said when asked if his spouse was fabricated.
Fuck a wife.
In fact, his whole NFT brand was a hoax, all designed, he now said, to peddle claims of bot-driven corruption of NFT markets.
Atto described the subterfuge to BuzzFeed News as
performance art. People don't pay attention unless you give them a reason to.
So, did The Chainsaw pay attention? They sure did, interviewing Atto again 10 days ago.
An NFT mogul faked being in a coma to blow the lid off a huge botting conspiracy. Unfortunately, it turns out that the entire story was a lie.
Oh dear, and who fell for that? Oh yes, they did. But there was no apology and no correction on the original article, at least until this morning. A Pedestrian Group spokesperson called that an oversight and told us,
"Thanks, Media Watch, for pointing it out."
It's a pleasure, although we really should not have to. And finally to the $100 billion question, to which Dr. Google has the answer. Last week in Paris, the media giant launched its runner in the race to develop artificial intelligence, which is called Bard. And while it ain't no Shakespeare, you'd think it must be pretty smart. So, to show how good it was, Google tweeted a video of Bard in action, complete with moving text. Wow. And it asked the AI oracle,
what new discoveries from the James Webb Space Telescope, or JWST, can I tell my 9-year-old about?
And guess what? One of the answers it gave was wrong. And as mere humans piled onto social media to point that out, the share price of Google's owner Alphabet plummeted, wiping $100 billion off the company's market value. Whoops. And what did Google have to say? A spokesperson told New Scientist,
this highlights the importance of a rigorous testing process.
It sure does, just like fact-checking in journalism. But when you're a $1 trillion media company, doesn't someone suggest you do that before your big promotion? Not much intelligence there. That's all from us for tonight. Don't forget Media Bites, Thursdays on Facebook, YouTube and iView. But for now, until next week, goodbye.